I am Sandra, 22 years old, a computer science graduate from Stanford with a passion for coding since childhood. While my parents bought my sister Janice a Tesla for graduation, they made me take the bus to my ceremony. My family never saw my potential, always favoring my outgoing sister. Little did they know about my secret tech startup that was about to change everything. Before I continue my journey from overlooked daughter to billionaire, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from and hit that like and subscribe button to join me on this emotional roller coaster. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Seattle shaped my earliest memories of feeling like the second choice. Our modest two-story house on Maple Street housed 4 people but often felt like my parents only truly saw 3. My father Warren worked as a bank manager at Seattle First National, always dressed in crisp suits and polished shoes. He carried himself with a certain rigidity that matched his financial mindset. My mother Phyllis taught English at the local high school, her days filled with literature and grammar, but somehow lacking the perception to see the inequality developing in her own home. Then there was my older sister Janice, 5 years my senior, at 27 now, who commanded attention from the moment she entered a room. With her outgoing personality and social butterfly tendencies, she became the natural focus of my parents' adoration. Her blonde hair and bright smile mirrored my mother, while I took after my more reserved paternal grandmother according to old family photos. The pattern of favoritism started early. When Janice was 7 and I was just 2, my parents documented her every milestone with professional photography sessions. By the time I took my first steps, the camera had been tucked away in a closet, my achievements relegated to occasional snapshots if they happened to have their phones ready. Family videos featured Janice front and center with me often visible only in the background. As we grew older, the contrast in our interests only widened the gap. Janice gravitated toward socializing, fashion, and activities that kept her in the spotlight. I found solace in the logical world of computers, dismantling my first desktop at age 9 when my father brought home an outdated model from the bank. While he initially seemed annoyed at finding me surrounded by computer parts on the living room floor, he simply shook his head and walked away. My 12th birthday crystallized the disparity in our treatment. After months of dropping hints about wanting a laptop for coding, I unwrapped my gifts with building excitement only to find basic school supplies: 3 notebooks, a pack of pencils, and a scientific calculator. My mother patted my shoulder as I struggled to hide my disappointment. "These are practical gifts, Sandra. You need to focus on school basics before thinking about expensive computers." Just 2 weeks later, Janice received a designer purse for no special occasion other than getting a B+ on a history test. When I pointed out the inconsistency, my father dismissed it with a wave. "Your sister has different needs. She has to maintain a certain image with her friends." My academic achievements piled up through middle school. Perfect math scores, science fair victories, coding competition invitations. My parents attended the mandatory parent-teacher conferences, but always seemed distracted checking watches and phones. Meanwhile, they never missed a single one of Janice's cheerleading performances, arriving early to secure front-row seats and brandishing video cameras to capture every jump and tumble. When I was 15, I won my first major coding competition, creating a program that helped local businesses optimize their inventory systems. The small trophy sat on my desk, unacknowledged by my parents who had declined to attend the ceremony due to a scheduling conflict with Janice College visit weekend. The local newspaper ran a small piece about the competition, which I cut out and saved in my journal. The only person who truly recognized my potential during those years was my computer science teacher, Carol Hayden. With her practical short gray hair and glasses that always slipped down her nose, she became my first real mentor. She stayed after school to give me advanced programming problems and connected me with online coding communities where I could develop my skills. "You have a gift, Sandra," she told me one afternoon as I debugged a particularly complex program. "Do not let anyone convince you otherwise, not even family." Those words became my mantra as I navigated high school. The constant overlooking of my achievements built something unexpected within me, a fierce independence and determination that drove me forward when external validation never came. I learned to celebrate my own victories no matter how small, and to find satisfaction in the elegant solutions I created in code, rather than in parental approval. By senior year of high school, I had developed a thick skin and realistic expectations. When my acceptance letter from Stanford arrived with a substantial merit scholarship, I showed it to my parents over dinner. My father glanced at it between bites of pot roast. "California is expensive. That scholarship better cover everything because we need to save for Janice graduate school plans." My mother added, "Stanford is so far away, Sandra. Are you sure you would not prefer somewhere closer to home?" I tucked the letter back into its envelope, recognizing the familiar ache but no longer surprised by it. That night, I emailed Carol with my news, and her enthusiastic response filled the void my parents' response had left. The pattern had been established early and reinforced consistently. I was the practical, self-sufficient daughter who needed little attention or investment. Janice was the special one who required their resources and focus. Rather than breaking me, this dynamic forged me into someone who didn't need external validation to recognize my own worth. As I packed for Stanford that August, I promised myself that I would build a future on my own terms, one elegant line of code at a time. The contrast between my sister Janice's world and mine became even more pronounced during my college years. While I had secured a substantial scholarship to Stanford, it only covered tuition and basic expenses. My parents' reaction to my acceptance had been lukewarm at best, with their focus remaining firmly on Janice, who was attending Washington State University, just a few hours from home. "We are so proud of Janice for staying close to home," my mother would say during our infrequent phone calls. "She comes home every other weekend, and your father and I love having her around." The unspoken implication hung in the air. I had chosen to leave to pursue my education across the country, and that choice somehow made me less deserving of their support, both emotional and financial. Despite having significantly lower tuition costs at the state school, my parents covered all of Janice's expenses. Her apartment car spending money, textbooks, everything was provided without question. Meanwhile, I balanced a rigorous computer science curriculum with part-time jobs that left me perpetually exhausted. My freshman year roommate situation proved disastrous until halfway through the first semester, when I was reassigned to share with Bonnie Mitchell, a mechanical engineering major with a wicked sense of humor and pragmatic outlook on life. She found me one evening slumped over my keyboard, trying to finish a coding assignment after a 6-hour shift at the campus coffee shop. "You look like you need this more than I do," Bonnie said, placing an energy drink beside my laptop. "Also maybe a friend who will tell you when to sleep." That moment marked the beginning of a friendship that would sustain me through the challenges ahead. Bonnie came from a large, supportive family in Minnesota, and she could not comprehend my parents' distant attitude. When I explained how they had forgotten to call on my 19th birthday because Janice had a minor fender bender that same day, Bonnie declared herself my surrogate family. "Their loss," she said firmly. "Some people do not deserve the amazing kids they have." Sophomore year brought a breakthrough moment in my academic journey. During a late-night coding session for an advanced algorithms class, I stumbled upon an innovative approach to data security. The solution came to me around 3 a.m, my whiteboard covered in diagrams and equations that somehow aligned perfectly in my sleep-deprived mind. "Professor Wilson, I think I found something," I told my mentor the next day, showing him my notes. His eyebrows rose progressively higher as he reviewed my work. This is exceptional, Sandra. This approach could revolutionize how we think about secure data transmission." That algorithm became the foundation for additional research, and I spent countless nights refining it, often falling asleep at my desk, only to be gently awakened by Bonnie with a cup of coffee and a granola bar. My algorithm caught the attention of several professors in the computer science department, but I kept its full potential close to my chest, instinctively protecting what I knew could be valuable. My junior year housing situation created another painful reminder of the disparity between Janice's treatment and mine. When on campus housing costs increased, I called home to ask if my parents might help with the difference. "We just cannot swing it, Sandra," my father said, the sound of a golf game playing in the background. "We have already committed to helping Janice with her new downtown condo. She needs to be in a safe neighborhood for her internship at my bank." The call ended with my father reminding me that I had always been the responsible one who could figure things out. I swallowed my frustration and found a cramped apartment with 3 other students, all of us sharing a single bathroom and taking turns using the tiny kitchen. That same month, Janice posted photos of her newly furnished condo on social media, tagging our parents and thanking them for their generosity. The modern 2-bedroom apartment featured stainless steel appliances and a balcony overlooking the city. My mother commented that only the best would do for their graduate student. I stopped checking their social media after that. The summer before my senior year, I secured an internship at Tech Future, a leading security software company in San Francisco. During my interview, I cautiously shared portions of my algorithm ideas, careful not to reveal the core innovations. "This is impressive work," said the interviewer, a senior engineer named Beverly Winters. "Most interns do not come in with original research at this level." The internship proved transformative. Beverly became another crucial mentor, recognizing potential in my work that even I had not fully appreciated. During our weekly check-ins, she asked probing questions that helped me refine my thinking. "Have you considered how this could be scaled for enterprise applications?" she asked during one session. "The security implications for financial institutions alone could be massive." Her questions sparked new directions in my research, and by the end of summer, I had expanded my original algorithm into the foundation for what would become Secure Shield, my startup company. What began as theoretical work evolved into practical applications with enormous market potential. When I returned to campus for senior year, I recruited 2 trusted classmates, Gary Thompson and Kenneth Peterson, both brilliant programmers who complemented my skills. We worked in secret using late-night lab sessions and encrypted communications to develop our prototype. "This could be worth millions," Gary whispered one night as we successfully tested a core component. "Are you sure you do not want to approach investors now?" I shook my head, thinking of my father and his banking connections. "Not yet. We need to perfect it first, protect the intellectual property. Then we will make our move." The growing distance between my family and me became especially apparent during holiday visits. Thanksgiving of my senior year featured a dinner table dominated by stories of Janice's success at her father-arranged bank job. No questions came my way about my studies internship or future plans. When I briefly mentioned being on track to graduate with highest honors, my mother nodded distractedly before turning the conversation back to Janice's office politics drama. I retreated further into my work, channeling the hurt into productivity. Secure Shield was taking shape with Beverly providing occasional guidance through encrypted video calls. By February of my senior year, we had a working prototype and had filed preliminary patents to protect our innovation. What my family fails to see was forming right under their noses. The overlooked daughter was building something that would soon make the entire tech industry take notice. Each dismissal, each forgotten achievement, had only strengthened my resolve to succeed on my own terms. As graduation approached, I had no idea how dramatically the dynamics were about to shift, or how a single bus ride would mark the dividing line between my past and future. Spring break of my senior year arrived with cherry blossoms dotting the Stanford campus. While most of my classmates headed to tropical destinations for their final college break, I reluctantly boarded a plane to Seattle. After staying on campus for the previous 2 breaks to work on Secure Shield, I had run out of excuses to avoid a family visit. The Seattle drizzle matched my mood as I took an Uber from the airport to my childhood home, having received no offer of a pickup from my parents. The house looked smaller somehow. The blue paint faded around the edges, my mother's garden precisely maintained as always. I used my key to let myself in, calling out a hello that echoed through the entryway. "In the kitchen," my mother responded. I found her preparing what appeared to be a celebratory dinner far more elaborate than our usual family meals. When I asked about the occasion, she looked surprised. For Janice, of course. Did not you get my text? She accepted a junior executive position at your father's bank. Of course. Another Janice celebration. My sister arrived 30 minutes later, our father beside her with his arm draped proudly over her shoulder. Janice had always resembled our mother, but now she had adopted our father's corporate style as well, dressed in a tailored blazer and designer pumps. The prodigal sister returns, Janice exclaimed upon seeing me air-kissing near my cheeks. How is nerd school treating you? Still playing with computers all day? I forced a smile, congratulated her on the new position, and helped my mother finish dinner preparations, while my father and Janice discussed her new office view and salary package in the living room. The familiar knot of tension formed in my stomach, the one that always appeared during family gatherings. Dinner conversation revolved entirely around Janice's new job, the connections she was making, and her apartment decorating plans. No one asked about my upcoming graduation or my plans afterward. I pushed food around my plate, wondering why I had bothered to come home at all. Then my father cleared his throat and raised his wineglass. A toast to Janice's success. Your mother and I have been discussing an appropriate graduation gift for you. My ears perked up despite myself. Was there a chance they had been planning something for my graduation too? We have decided, my father continued, his smile wide, to buy you a Tesla, the Model S in midnight silver. We have already placed the order. Janice squealed with delight, jumping up to hug both our parents. Oh my God, are you serious? That is amazing. I sat, frozen fork suspended halfway to my mouth. After a moment of stunned silence, I finally found my voice. That is quite a gift. Congratulations, Janice. Now, Sandra. My mother turned to me with that placating tone she always used when she sensed my disappointment. Your graduation is coming up too. Will you need us to help with travel arrangements? The question seemed so absurd in contrast to the $80,000 gift they had just bestowed on my sister that I almost laughed. Instead, I simply asked, Are you planning to come to my ceremony? Of course we are, my father said, though I noticed he did not meet my eyes. We will fly down that morning and meet you there. What about getting to the ceremony? Stanford graduation is always packed, I said, keeping my tone casual. Will you be able to give me a ride from my apartment? My father frowned slightly, as if the logistics of my graduation were an inconvenience he had not considered. We will be cutting it close with our flight arrival. Why do not you just take the campus shuttle or a bus? We will meet you at the ceremony. Take the bus. We are buying your sister a Tesla, I repeated, unable to keep the edge from my voice. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table until my mother broke it with her nervous laugh. Well, you have always been the practical one, Sandra. Janice needs to make the right impression in her new position. A Tesla suits her professional image. And what about my professional image? I asked quietly. My father waved dismissively. You are going into tech. Everyone knows you people prefer hoodies and backpacks to business attire. Being practical is an asset in your field. I excused myself shortly after retreating to my childhood bedroom that remained unchanged since high school, still decorated with academic achievement certificates that had never earned the praise lavished on Janice's cheerleading trophies. Sitting on my twin bed, I called Bonnie, tears finally spilling over as I recounted the dinner conversation. They are buying her a Tesla, Bonnie. A Tesla. And they told me to take the bus to my own graduation. Those people do not deserve you, Bonnie said firmly. I swear, when Secure Shield takes off, I am going to enjoy watching their faces when they realize what they have been overlooking all these years. Her words reminded me of what truly mattered. I had built something valuable without their support or encouragement. In just a few months, I would graduate with highest honors and launch a company with tremendous potential. Their approval had never been forthcoming. So why did I still crave it? I returned to campus with renewed determination, channeling my hurt into productive energy. The final stages of Secure Shield development consumed my days and nights. Gary and Kenneth had become not just business partners, but friends who believed in our shared vision. "We have got interest from 3 major tech companies," Gary announced during one late-night session in the engineering lab. "They are asking about acquisition possibilities." Kenneth pulled up the email from the most serious contender. "This one is offering $8 million as a starting point for negotiations." $8 million. The figure should have made me ecstatic, but something held me back. "This algorithm is worth more than that. Much more. They are lowballing us because we are students." "What do you suggest?" Kenneth asked, rubbing his tired eyes. "We hold firm. We finish development graduate, and then enter negotiations from a position of strength." I looked at my dedicated team. This could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. "Do you trust me to see it through?" Their nods of agreement cemented our path forward. As graduation week approached, we worked feverishly to finalize our product while maintaining our academic requirements. The venture capitalist firm that had shown interest, Horizon Investments, remained in contact with their representative Roger Daniels, occasionally checking on our progress. "Just keeping the door open," he would say casually at the end of our calls. "We see tremendous potential in your security framework." What none of us realized was just how quickly that potential would materialize, or how dramatically it would change everything. As I packed my graduation gown and cap the night before the ceremony, I had no idea that the bus ride my father had so casually mandated would mark the last moments of my old life. The morning of my graduation dawned with perfect California sunshine, the kind of day Stanford includes in recruitment brochures. I stood before the mirror in my small apartment, adjusting the collar of my dress beneath the graduation gown. Bonnie had already left for the ceremony with her parents, who had flown in 3 days early to help her pack and celebrate. My phone pinged with a text from my mother. "Landed in San Francisco. We'll meet you at the ceremony. Look for us in Section D." No congratulations. No expression of pride. Just logistics. I tucked my phone away and gathered my things. My apartment was mostly packed up, ready for whatever came next. 4 years of college life reduced to labeled boxes and suitcases. Looking around the empty space, I felt a strange mixture of nostalgia and anticipation. The bus stop near my apartment complex was already busy with morning commuters when I arrived. I felt slightly ridiculous in my graduation regalia, drawing curious glances from others waiting for the bus. A businessman in a suit nodded toward my cap. "Graduating today?" "Yes, from Stanford. Computer science." "Congratulations. Big achievement." His words held more genuine warmth than anything my parents had offered about my graduation. The bus arrived with a hydraulic hiss, and I found a seat near the middle, careful not to wrinkle my gown. As we pulled away from the curb, I watched the familiar streets pass by, thinking about how this route had become part of my daily life. The bus represented so much of my college experience, working harder, making do with less, finding practical solutions, while others enjoyed luxuries. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The screen displayed Roger Daniels' name, the venture capitalist who had been keeping tabs on Secure Shield. Curious about the early morning call, I answered. "Sandra, glad I caught you. Do you have a minute to talk?" His voice carried an unusual excitement. "I am actually on my way to graduation, but yes, I have a few minutes." "This cannot wait. We have been talking with several major security firms about your technology. The interest has exceeded our wildest expectations." I gripped the phone tighter. "What exactly does that mean?" "It means," Roger paused dramatically, "that as of this morning, we have offers valuing Secure Shield at $2.4 billion. With your equity stake, you are now a billionaire, Sandra. A 22-year-old billionaire." The bus hit a pothole, jolting me forward, but I barely noticed. "That is not possible," I whispered. "Not only possible, but confirmed. The official paperwork will come through this afternoon, but I wanted you to know before your graduation. Congratulations on making history, Sandra. You are now officially the youngest female tech billionaire in America." The call ended with promises of meetings and celebrations to come, but I sat in stunned silence as the bus continued its route to campus. $2.4 billion. The figure was incomprehensible. My algorithm, my late nights, my vision that no one in my family had ever taken seriously had just made me one of the wealthiest people in the country. Fellow passengers must have wondered about the girl in graduation robes, who alternated between silent tears and incredulous laughter for the remainder of the ride. By the time the bus reached campus, I had composed myself enough to function, though reality still felt altered. The university grounds teemed with graduates and their families. Luxury cars lined the drop-off areas, parents helping students with their gowns, taking photos, offering proud hugs. I scanned the crowds, eventually spotting my family near the entrance to the ceremony area. My heart sank as I realized what I was seeing. My parents and Janice stood next to a brand new Tesla, its midnight silver paint gleaming in the sunlight. Janice was posing for photos that my father was enthusiastically taking, both of them laughing as she pretended to polish the hood. My mother stood nearby holding Janice's purse and smiling indulgently. I approached slowly, waiting for them to notice me. When my mother finally caught sight of me, she waved casually as if I had just arrived at a routine family dinner, rather than my college graduation. "Sandra, there you are. The bus was on time then." "Yes, very punctual," I replied, accepting her brief hug. My father nodded in my direction, still fiddling with his camera. "We got great shots of Janice with her graduation gift," he said. "She even let the valet attendant take a photo with it. The young man was quite impressed." Janice finally turned her attention to me. "Hey sis, what do you think? Is not she gorgeous?" She patted the car like it was a beloved pet. "Very nice." I managed, fighting to keep my expression neutral. The contrast between their excitement over a car and their indifference to my academic achievement was almost comical in light of what I had just learned on the bus. Before the uncomfortable interaction could continue, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Turning, I found Dean Martha Stevens, her academic robes more elaborate than the students. "Sandra Cooper. Just the graduate I was looking for," she said warmly. "Would you mind coming with me? There is something I need to discuss before the ceremony." I excused myself from my family, who barely seemed to notice my departure, and followed the dean to a quieter area near the administrative building. "I received a rather interesting call this morning," Dean Stevens said once we were alone. "From Roger Daniels at Horizon Investments." My eyes widened. "He called you?" She nodded. "Stanford takes great pride in our entrepreneurs, Sandra. What you have accomplished with Secure Shield is remarkable, and the university would like to recognize it during today's ceremony." She smiled at my surprised expression. "Not everyone graduates as a billionaire, Ms. Cooper. I would prefer to keep it low-key." I started thinking of my family. The dean shook her head gently. "Your achievement deserves recognition. It will inspire other students for years to come." She checked her watch. "We should get you to your place in the procession. Just be prepared for a special mention during the ceremony." As I took my assigned place among my fellow computer science graduates, I caught sight of Bonnie a few rows ahead with the mechanical engineering students. She turned, gave me a thumbs up, and mouthed, "Almost done." I smiled back, wondering how her expression would change when she learned my news. The graduation ceremony was about to become far more memorable than any of us had anticipated. The graduation procession began with all the pomp and circumstance befitting a prestigious university like Stanford. As we marched into the outdoor amphitheater to pomp and circumstance, I searched the crowd for my family. I eventually spotted them in Section D as promised, though I noticed my father checking his watch repeatedly, and my mother fanning herself despite the pleasant temperature. Janice was on her phone, clearly disengaged from the proceedings. The first hour of the ceremony progressed with welcome speeches and recognition of various faculty achievements. I sat among my fellow computer science graduates, many of whom I had pulled all-nighters with in the engineering building over the years. There was a surreal quality to the moment sitting here in academic regalia while carrying the secret of my new billionaire status. "Can you believe we actually made it?" whispered Gary, who was seated beside me. He and Kenneth were both part of Secure Shield, but had no idea about the morning phone call that had changed everything. "Just wait," I whispered back cryptically. "Today is going to get a lot more interesting." The ceremony continued with the conferring of honorary degrees and special recognition for outstanding students in various disciplines. I felt my anxiety building as each award brought us closer to whatever announcement Dean Stevens had planned. Part of me still wanted to maintain my privacy to process my new reality before it became public knowledge. Another part recognized the powerful statement it would make, especially to the family who had dismissed my potential for so long. Finally, Dean Stevens approached the microphone after the recognition of various honors graduates. She adjusted her glasses and smiled at the assembled crowd. "Before we proceed to the conferring of degrees, I would like to take a moment to recognize an extraordinary achievement by one of our graduates. At Stanford, we pride ourselves on fostering innovation and entrepreneurial spirit, but rarely do we see success of this magnitude before a student has even received their diploma." My heart pounded as the dean continued. "It is my honor to announce that one of today's graduates has recently made history in the technology sector. Through brilliant innovation in data security algorithms, this student has created a company valued this morning at $2.4 billion. A murmur swept through the crowd, students turning to look at each other questioningly. "Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in recognizing Sandra Cooper, graduating today with highest honors in computer science, and as of this morning officially, the youngest female billionaire in the technology sector. Sandra, would you please join me at the podium?" The silence that followed the announcement lasted only a split second before erupting into astonished applause. I rose from my seat on shaky legs, aware of the stunned expressions of my classmates, including Gary and Kenneth, who looked like they might pass out from shock. As I made my way to the stage, I couldn't help glancing toward Section D. My parents sat, frozen expressions of disbelief etched on their faces. Janice had dropped her phone into her lap, her mouth literally hanging open. The sight was so precisely what I had imagined that I almost laughed despite my nervousness. Dean Stevens shook my hand warmly as I reached the podium, stepping aside to allow me to address the crowd. Facing the sea of faces, I took a deep breath and found my voice. "Thank you, Dean Stevens, for this unexpected recognition. When I came to Stanford 4 years ago, I could never have imagined standing here today with this announcement. My journey began with a simple love of solving problems through code and evolved into something far beyond my initial dreams." I paused, scanning the audience until I found my family again. "I have learned that success often comes not from having every advantage, but from perseverance in the face of challenges. Sometimes being underestimated is the greatest gift, as it forces you to prove your worth through your work, rather than through others' perceptions." The crowd applauded, and I caught sight of Bonnie in her seat, tears streaming down her face as she clapped wildly. She more than anyone knew what this moment truly meant. To my fellow graduates, I encourage you to pursue your passions relentlessly, regardless of whether others recognize your potential. True success comes from believing in your own vision when no one else does. Thank you. As I returned to my seat, amidst thunderous applause, I felt a weight lifting. The validation I had unconsciously sought for years had arrived not from my family, but from my own efforts and the recognition of those who valued innovation and hard work. The remainder of the ceremony passed in a blur. When we finally tossed our caps into the air as newly minted graduates, the celebration around me took on new significance. Fellow students who had barely spoken to me throughout our 4 years suddenly appeared, offering congratulations and, in some cases, not so subtle hints about job opportunities. Gary and Kenneth found me in the crowd, both still looking shell-shocked. $2.4 billion, Gary managed, his voice cracking. "When did this happen?" "Roger called this morning while I was on the bus," I explained. "I was going to tell you after the ceremony." Kenneth shook his head in amazement. Are we all billionaires now? Not quite, but your equity stakes are worth millions, I confirmed, enjoying their stunned reactions. We should celebrate tonight. My treat, obviously. As the crowd dispersed, I spotted my family making their way toward me. Their expressions had transformed entirely. My father, normally so composed, looked flustered, straightening his tie repeatedly as they approached. My mother wore her company smile, the one reserved for important bank clients and parent-teacher conferences. Janice trailed slightly behind them, her earlier smugness replaced by something that looked remarkably like uncertainty. Sandra, darling. My mother's voice carried a warmth I had rarely heard directed at me. What an incredible surprise. Why did not you tell us about this amazing company of yours? My father extended his hand as if meeting a business associate rather than congratulating his daughter. 2.4 billion. That is remarkable, truly remarkable. We always knew you were working on something special at Stanford. I raised an eyebrow at this revisionist history, but accepted his handshake. I do not recall much interest in my projects over the years. Janice stepped forward, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. This is such a big deal, sis. Billionaire. That is crazy. I bet you could buy like 100 Teslas now. A classmate passing by overheard this comment and paused. Sandra, is this your family? He asked, extending his hand to my father. You must be incredibly proud. Your daughter is a legend in the computer science department. We all knew she was brilliant, but this is beyond anything we imagined. My father nodded vigorously, placing his arm around my shoulders, as if we had always been close. Absolutely proud. Sandra has always been exceptional. As the classmate moved on, I gently stepped away from my father's embrace, maintaining a polite smile. I should find my business partners. We have some paperwork to handle with our investors. Of course, my father said quickly. But we should celebrate as a family tonight. Our treat at that French restaurant you mentioned once. La Maison. The irony was not lost on me. La Maison was a restaurant I had mentioned years ago when I received my Stanford acceptance. My parents had dismissed it as too expensive, then opting instead for a quick dinner at a chain restaurant before focusing conversation on Janice's summer plans. Actually, I have other plans tonight, I replied. Business matters to attend to. I am sure you understand the importance of striking while the iron is hot. Their disappointment was evident. But before they could protest, a sleek black Lamborghini pulled up nearby, and Lloyd Wilson, a classmate from a venture capital family, called out to me. Cooper, need a ride to the investors' meeting. Roger asked me to collect you. I turned back to my family with a small smile. My ride is here. Enjoy the Tesla, Janice. I will be in touch about dinner another time. As I walked away, I heard my mother's faint voice behind me. But I thought she took the bus. The contrast between arriving at graduation on a public bus and leaving in a Lamborghini was not lost on me. But as satisfying as that moment of reversal felt, I knew the real work of addressing my family dynamics was just beginning. The post-graduation dinner at Saison, one of San Francisco's most exclusive restaurants, marked the beginning of a new chapter in my relationship with my family. Roger had arranged a private dining room to celebrate SecureShield's valuation and discuss next steps, but my parents had insisted on joining despite my reluctance. So there we sat, my newly minted business partners, our lead investor, and my suddenly attentive family surrounded by understated luxury. To Sandra Cooper, Roger raised his champagne glass, whose brilliant mind has created not just a valuable company, but a security solution that will protect data for millions of users worldwide. Everyone clinked glasses, my parents' enthusiasm notably amplified. My father had positioned himself next to Roger, clearly hoping to forge a connection with the prominent venture capitalist. We always encouraged Sandra's interest in computers. My father said revisionist history in full swing. I remember bringing home her first desktop when she was just 9 years old. I sipped my champagne, remembering how he had actually been annoyed when I dismantled that computer to understand its components. Is that so? Roger replied politely. Sandra, you mentioned starting with very little support. How did you manage to develop such advanced skills so young? The table grew quiet, my father's smile freezing in place. I considered sugarcoating the truth for a moment, then decided against it. I was largely self-taught, I answered honestly. My high school computer science teacher, Carol Hayden, was my first real mentor. Then I found support from professors at Stanford and friends like Bonnie, who believed in my vision. Janice, who had been unusually quiet all evening, suddenly spoke up. We're all so proud of Sandra now. Who could have imagined my little sister would become so successful? She laughed a brittle sound. I mean, I was always the one everyone expected would do well. Different definitions of success, I suppose, Gary commented mildly, earning a sharp look from Janice. As the appetizers arrived, conversation shifted to business matters. Roger outlined the interest from major tech companies and security firms, explaining how SecureShield's algorithm had sparked a bidding war that drove the valuation to unprecedented levels. The paperwork was finalized during the graduation ceremony, he explained. Sandra now controls 51% of a $2.4 billion company, with Gary and Kenneth holding 15% each, and Horizon Investments the remaining 19%. My mother nearly choked on her wine. 51%. So that means… Yes, Mrs. Cooper, Roger confirmed. Sandra's personal net worth is now approximately $1.2 billion. The silence that followed was broken only by the delicate sound of silverware against fine china. My parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret while Janice stared at her plate, pushing food around without eating. We should discuss your financial management, my father finally said, slipping into his banker voice. I have extensive experience with high net worth clients. I could help you set up the proper trusts and investment vehicles. I placed my fork down carefully. Thank you for the offer, but we have already engaged one of the top wealth management firms in the country. They specialize in sudden tech wealth. My father's face fell slightly. But family helping family makes the most sense. You can trust me with your finances, Sandra. Trust is earned, I replied quietly, meeting his eyes. And to be honest, I'm not sure our family dynamics have demonstrated that trust consistently. My mother inhaled sharply. Sandra, that's hardly appropriate dinner conversation. Actually, I continued maintaining a calm demeanor. I think it's perfectly appropriate given the circumstances. For years I've watched Janice receive preferential treatment while my achievements were minimized. The Tesla versus the bus to graduation is just the most recent example. We've always treated you both equally, my mother protested, though her voice lacked conviction. Equal, really? I reached for my phone, opening my calendar. Let's see. You attended 3 of my academic events throughout high school and college combined. According to Facebook memories, you attended 78 of Janice's cheerleading competitions and social events during the same period. Janice shifted uncomfortably. That's different. Those were social events where parents were expected. And parents aren't expected at Stanford honor ceremonies or coding competition finals, I asked mildly. The difference wasn't in the events, Janice. It was in the value placed on them. My father cleared his throat, glancing at Roger, who was watching the exchange with undisguised interest. Perhaps this isn't the best venue for family discussions. I disagree, I replied. I've spent years being overlooked in silence. I think I've earned the right to speak my truth, especially on the day that truth has been so dramatically validated. Roger nodded slightly, a gesture of respect that didn't go unnoticed by my father. We always knew you were special, Sandra, my mother said, reaching across the table as if to take my hand, though I kept mine firmly around my water glass. We just showed it differently. You didn't show it at all, I corrected her gently. And that's the point. Not that I needed lavish gifts or constant praise, but basic recognition and equal support would have been nice. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table until Kenneth, ever the peacemaker, steered the conversation towards SecureShield's future plans. The business discussion provided welcome relief from the family tension, and by dessert, we had outlined an ambitious growth strategy that had even my father listening with genuine interest. As coffee was served, my father made another attempt. Sandra, now that you're in a different financial position, perhaps you could help your sister with her student loans. As family, we should support each other. I nearly laughed at the transparent pivot from offering to manage my money to suggesting I pay Janice's debts. Interesting that family support becomes important now that the support would flow in Janice's direction. Janice flushed. I don't need your charity, Sandra. It's not about charity, I replied. It's about the sudden change in attitude now that I have resources. The dinner concluded with tentative plans for my parents to visit San Francisco again the following month. As we parted outside the restaurant, my mother hugged me with unusual emotion. We're so proud of you, Sandra. Truly. I accepted her embrace, but couldn't help wondering where that pride had been when I had needed it most. My father shook my hand formally, then surprised me by pulling me into an awkward hug. You've done something remarkable, he said. I'm sorry if I didn't see it sooner. Janice hung back, clearly struggling with the evening's revelations. When we finally said goodbye, she whispered, Congratulations, sis. I mean it. For once, her words seemed genuine. I watched them drive away in Janice's new Tesla, feeling oddly detached from the scene. The family that had shaped my early years now seemed like characters from a previous life, one I had outgrown through necessity and determination. Back in my soon-to-be former apartment, I stood amid the packed boxes processing the day's events. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Stanford grad becomes youngest female tech billionaire. The reality of my new status was beginning to sink in. I called Beverly, my mentor from the Tech Future internship, who answered despite the late hour. I saw the news, she said without preamble. I knew your algorithm was valuable, but this exceeds even my expectations. How are you feeling? Overwhelmed, I admitted. Not just about the money, but everything. My family suddenly wants to be involved in my life after years of indifference. Set boundaries now, Beverly advised. Success attracts many people with mixed motivations, even family. Her words resonated as I gazed around my humble student apartment, thinking about the penthouse I had already put a deposit on in San Francisco's Russian Hill neighborhood. Tomorrow, I would sign the final paperwork for a property worth more than my parents' house and Janice's condo combined. More importantly, I had already allocated funds for the scholarship foundation I planned to establish, supporting overlooked students with technical aptitude but limited family support. The Overlooked Genius Scholarship would ensure others had the opportunities I had fought so hard to create for myself. As I prepared for bed in my small student apartment for one of the last times, I realized that the true wealth I had gained wasn't measured in billions. It was the knowledge that I had succeeded not because of my circumstances, but despite them. The overlooked daughter had found her own path to success on her own terms, without waiting for validation that might never have come. 6 months after graduation, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my Russian Hill penthouse, watching fog roll over the Golden Gate Bridge. The view still took my breath away, a daily reminder of how dramatically my life had transformed since that bus ride to graduation. Secure Shield had grown exponentially, now employing over 200 people in our South of Market headquarters. The algorithm that began as a late-night inspiration in my dorm room was now protecting data for major financial institutions, healthcare systems, and government agencies worldwide. Forbes had featured me in their 30 Under 30 issue, and Time magazine had included me in their 100 Most Influential People list, with Beverly writing the accompanying profile. More meaningful than the professional accolades was the personal growth I had experienced in establishing healthy boundaries with my family. The journey had not been simple or linear, but it had been necessary for my emotional well-being. My parents had made numerous attempts at reconciliation, some seemingly genuine, others transparently motivated by my new status and wealth. My father had sent multiple investment proposals and suggestions for family business ventures, each more ambitious than the last. My mother had taken to calling weekly, her conversations peppered with mentions of her friends' reactions to her billionaire daughter, and suggestions for charitable donations to her various social committees. Establishing clear boundaries had been uncomfortable but essential. I had engaged a family therapist to facilitate several difficult conversations, making it clear that while I was open to building a healthier relationship, I would not allow my past treatment to be minimized or forgotten. "I understand you did the best you could with what you knew," I told my parents during one particularly emotional session, "but that doesn't erase the years of feeling invisible and less valued than Janice. I need acknowledgement of that reality before we can move forward." My father, uncomfortable with emotional vulnerability, had struggled the most with these conversations. "We never meant to make you feel that way," he had insisted repeatedly until the therapist gently challenged him to move beyond intentions to impact. Surprisingly, it was Janice who had shown the most growth. After several awkward solo lunches, my sister had tearfully admitted that she had always been aware of the preferential treatment. "I knew it wasn't fair," she confessed over coffee one afternoon, "but I was afraid if I pointed it out, they might stop favoring me. It was selfish, and I'm sorry, Sandra." That moment of honesty had opened the door to a more authentic relationship between us. Janice had eventually left the position at our father's bank to pursue a marketing degree funded by her own efforts rather than parental support. The shift in her self-reliance had changed her perspective dramatically. Therapy had been a crucial part of my healing journey. Weekly sessions helped me process the complicated emotions surrounding my childhood and new status. My therapist, Dr. Wilson, had helped me recognize that financial success couldn't heal emotional wounds, but it could provide the resources to address them properly. "Becoming a billionaire didn't change your worth as a person," she reminded me during one session. "That worth was always there regardless of whether your parents recognized it." Those words had become a mantra as I navigated my new reality. I had also built a circle of authentic friendships that provided the emotional support my family had often failed to deliver. Bonnie had joined Secure Shield as our head of operations, her practical mindset proving invaluable as we scaled rapidly. Gary and Kenneth remained close friends and colleagues, the shared journey of building our company creating bonds that felt like family. One of my greatest joys had been reconnecting with Carol Hayden, my high school computer science teacher, who had first recognized my potential. I had invited her to San Francisco for lunch, a meeting that turned emotional when I revealed the influence she had on my life. "You were the first person who truly saw me," I told her across the table at a quiet restaurant. "When my family overlooked my abilities, you nurtured them. I wouldn't be where I am without your encouragement." Carol, now retired with silver hair instead of gray, had smiled through tears. "I always knew you would do something remarkable, Sandra. I just didn't know it would be quite this remarkable." That lunch had led to the establishment of the Carol Hayden Technology Education Fund, providing resources for teachers who championed overlooked students with technical aptitude. The foundation complemented my Overlooked Genius Scholarship program, which had already awarded full rides to 15 promising students from challenging backgrounds. The most profound lesson of my journey had been recognizing that parental approval, which I had unconsciously sought for so long, was ultimately less important than self-validation. No amount of external success could fill the void created by years of emotional neglect. That healing had to come from within, from learning to celebrate my own achievements whether or not others acknowledged them. While my relationship with my parents remained a work in progress, I had found peace in accepting their limitations. They were flawed humans who had done their best with the emotional tools they possessed, even if those tools had been inadequate for nurturing a child who didn't fit their preconceived notions of success. Perhaps the most surprising development had been my transportation choices. Despite being able to afford any vehicle imaginable, I often chose to take public transportation around San Francisco. Not from financial necessity, but as a reminder of where I had come from and the journey that had shaped me. One rainy Tuesday, I found myself on a Muni bus, heading downtown for a meeting dressed in a casual hoodie rather than the power suits expected of someone in my position. The elderly woman seated beside me struck up a conversation unaware of who I was. Terrible weather today, isn't it? She commented, adjusting her shopping bags. It is, I agreed. But sometimes the journey matters more than staying comfortable. She nodded thoughtfully. That's a good philosophy for life, not just commuting. I smiled, thinking how profound her casual observation was. My journey had never been about reaching a financial destination. It had been about proving primarily to myself that being underestimated could become a superpower when channeled into determination and self-belief. As the bus navigated the steep hills of San Francisco, I reflected on the emotional journey that had paralleled my professional one. From the overlooked daughter taking the bus to graduation, to a billionaire entrepreneur who chose the bus as a reminder of her roots, I had come full circle. The path hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been tears, confrontations, therapy sessions, and difficult conversations. But through it all, I had discovered that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in self-knowledge, authentic relationships, and the ability to create opportunity for others who might otherwise be overlooked. That more than any bank balance or magazine cover was the legacy I hoped to build. A legacy of recognizing potential where others might miss it, of valuing substance over appearance, and of understanding that sometimes the greatest gift you can receive is being underestimated. Have you ever felt overlooked or underestimated by someone important in your life? How did that experience shape you? Share your story in the comments below. And do not forget to like, subscribe, and share if this resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the people who cannot see your value are giving you the perfect opportunity to prove them wrong. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope my story inspires you to recognize your own worth regardless of whether others do.